First item is disclosures of pecuniary interest. If any member has an interest, you can disclose that with the clerk. Next up are the minutes from the June 24th meeting. Be it resolved, the minutes from the regular council meeting held June 24th, 2019 be approved as presented and circulated. Mover and second for that. Moved by Councilor Bernardo, second by Councilor Wegner. Any questions or comments on the minutes? All in favor? It's carried. Public question period. Any questions from the public tonight? Alex?
Yes. Would council please consider in future enabling the fire chief to have some sort of power over people who are setting off fireworks when it's not Canada Day and they're in our rural neighborhood environments? That's an ongoing issue with regards to noise pollution, the environment and everything. And it just seems like there's no recourse. And people have lately complained to me that they've come to the town hall or police and they don't have what it takes to be able to, even go to the person's house and say, stop doing that.
Yeah. The fire chief was to council last term with a draft fireworks bylaw. I'm not sure if you remember that or not, but we did have a fairly lengthy discussion about it, and council today sent him back with a few comments, and I think he's sort of been working on a redraft. But your point's well taken, and I think we'll follow up with him to see if he can bring back that updated draft. Walter, you're chair of the fire board.
Actually, I did question that at one of the board meetings, and he is working on it to bring back. He's not on holidays right now, but that's something that's on his list to bring back. I think it was just the one item that was questioned. I think it was a timing item, and he is working on that. So it'll be back in front of council.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, the CAO has just indicated, Alex, if anybody expresses concerns to you directly, if you could ask them to come forward to the town so we can start to build a database.
Okay, no problem with that.
Any other questions for question period? Okay, so we'll close question period and move along to presentation. So tonight we're joined by Stacey Dobb, who is the president and CEO of Headwaters Healthcare Center, along with some colleagues. So I'll turn the floor over to you, Stacey, and you can introduce the rest of your team.
Today I have Lori Kaur, who is the board chair of Headwaters Healthcare Center, Ken Thompson, who is a governor and also a resident of Shelburne, Jennifer Hamilton, who works in communications, as well as Tom Reed, who I think you all know. I also want to just make reference that we have another Shelburne resident who has joined a committee of the board. Winifred Anderson has recently joined. She'll be joining the board committee in the fall, so we're happy to have some more representation from Shelburne. The purpose today is just to give a brief update. Last time I was here, I came to talk about the Imagine Headwaters campaign and the work that we had done to reconnect out to communities. I also want to follow up and make reference to some of the things that have had since the meeting with the deputy and the mayor in terms of thinking about planning for services in Shelburne. And lastly, really talk about some of the provincial changes that are coming. They're quite substantive. And the necessity of us to work together as communities, both hospital and towns, in terms of making sure that Dufferin County in particular is not left behind, and that we very much are part of the planning process in terms of some of the changes that are coming. So I think this was pre-circulated. So a lot of the beginning materials are really the backdrop to our Reimagine Headwaters or Imagine Headwaters campaign. We were able to really go from border to border in Dufferin and Caledon, have a lot of people, including out here at the market, but at other community events. And the purpose was really to meet people where they were and to ask them about their experience with the hospital and to look for their advice in terms of things that we did well and we should keep doing, but also things that we could do better, or services and supports that they wanted more locally. I would say people were quite vocal across the community, and the manner in which we did it, I think, really saw us get quite significant feedback. And one of the values of meeting people where they are is that not only did we hear good experiences, so we heard a lot about the hospital and how important it was to the community, but we also heard about things that we could do that needed to be improving. And some of them were very tangible and things that we could actually take back to the hospital and change right away. We had an individual who lived in the northern part of our catchment, who needed a particular piece of equipment in order to get dialysis locally at the hospital. And so by talking to him, we were able to then see that we could get that piece of equipment and work with our foundation to fundraise it, and now he receives dialysis locally. We are committed to continuing to do that, and just recently, I think a couple of weeks ago, we brought a large group of community providers to the Shelburne market, so mental health providers, community support, Meals on Wheels, the hospital, community paramedic services to be at the market and talk to people. So we're looking for more opportunities to get out there and talk about some of the services that are available. So during that process, we talked to over 3,000 people. We got over 1,500 surveys from the community, which is quite significant. And we heard some very similar themes that I shared with the council last time I was here. And that all led us to developing our new strategic plan, of which each of you has a copy in front of you. And I just want to kind of do an overview of the highlights. So we have moved from a kind of a mission and vision, which were long and hard for people to remember, to one purpose, and that's one community caring together. And that one community caring together not only represents within the hospital ways of working together from the emergency department to the inpatient, but also the need for us to work with local primary care, other types of providers, health and social service providers, to think about the health and health services for the community. So we have three areas that we are advancing. The one is getting even better. So this is building on the idea that we generally are a high-performing hospital, but we need to continue to do even better. And that includes things like more programs and services into the local community, taking care of the facility. And we did really hear a lot of people talk about the pride they had in the hospital, and they wanted the hospital to be well cared for. And over the next year, we will be seeing redevelopment of the emergency department. So it was built for 20,000 visits. It gets 45. It's very well used. So through the generosity of a donor, we're going to be redoing both the emergency department as well as the front lobby that you come in and taking those stairs that are quite dangerous out of the hospital. And that will revitalize the whole main floor of the hospital, and I think create quite a welcoming environment, but also allow our practitioners and clinicians to have more treatment spaces and be able to treat people faster and in a more supportive environment. One area that we really struggle with as a community is mental health issues, and we've taken a particular approach in our emergency department to think how we can be more supportive of people who present with mental health issues. There are a whole bunch of other services that people would like to see closer to home, and I know in Shelburne in particular, even closer to home doesn't mean just at the hospital in Headwaters, but more locally out here. Over the last year, there have been a number of things that have changed in Shelburne. So for the first time, the family health team has opened up a walk-in clinic for non-rostered patients, which is it's one of the only family health teams that actually has done that. And there is continued discussion about doing other services. I think there is already a nursing clinic here, or it should be going in fairly quickly by the LIN. So I do think you'll start to see some traction on that, despite with the announcement that the health service restructuring, the LIN, it's been more challenging. They're great partners, but it's been really challenging to continue to move things at the pace we had before. The second direction is nothing about you without you. So increased partnership with patients, families, and caregivers. So we have a growing patient and family advisory committee that is working with us to do things like redesign the hospital emergency department. But this idea that we don't do anything about our programs and services without patients and families who sit us in participating in that. And similar with the hospital, nothing about the future of the hospital without the communities it serves and helping us in the future. The last one, which is, I think, one of the most exciting areas, and that's integrated care and care closer to home. I want to move into just the changes that are happening provincially. So the Ministry of Health came out in February and made an announcement that they were advancing something called Ontario Health Teams. So that would see the elimination of many other provincial agencies, and instead of that, one Ontario Health Agency, some regional bodies, but then much more local integrated health teams. We worked with a whole series of partners across Dufferin and Caledon and submitted a readiness assessment in May of this year for an Ontario Health Team for this region. And we expect to hear in the next couple of weeks whether Dufferin Caledon has been selected as one of the inaugural groups to move forward to the next steps. The next steps don't mean you get to be an Ontario Health Team. It means you have to put in a longer application, and then after that they do site visits. and then eventually in the fall they're going to make the announcement around the first generation Ontario Health Teams. They really are going to completely change the way healthcare is delivered in communities. It's the biggest change I've seen in my 25-year history. And so working with the townships and Dufferin County is going to be really important to think about how those teams are planned and what it looks like in the future. But in a nutshell, the one big difference for people to appreciate is right now, there's 20, 30 agencies in Dufferin-Caledon. They're all separately funded. They have separate accountability agreements. It would be moving within a number of years to having one single accountability and one funding agreement. And what they've indicated is that going into the future, that if those those Ontario Health Teams are able to generate savings or surpluses, that they can just reinvest those back, and they would have more flexibility about how they can spend their monies across the community. So the idea is promising. There's not a roadmap. There's a lot of ambiguity of how people are going to get there, but the local teams, I think, have been quite supportive. We had a local planning day last week. We saw about 100 people come out to that to think about planning for the future, and it was quite positive. So I think we're in pretty good shape in terms of being selected. A couple of other updates for the hospital. So we are seeing increased volumes, particularly in our inpatient units. So that has seen a bit of slower wait times over the winter season. We are moving to bring, hopefully, first consultation cancer care services to our community. So right now, you can get your follow-up care, but we're hoping to be able to provide more cancer care services earlier in people's journey. We're just bringing urology back to the community. It's been gone out of the community for quite some time. And we've been doing a lot of work with Tom and others' leadership in terms of extending palliative care. And we have quite a good home-based palliative care network right across the Dufferin-Caledon right now that sees many people getting very different palliative care than they would have in the past. And I'm quite proud of the work that's happening in that area. And we're kind of using palliative as a test model, that if we can really think about how to create one team for palliative that goes across communities, goes across from hospital to home to hospice, that's kind of the wave of the future for other types of populations. As I mentioned, there are some significant upgrades happening to the hospital. We've gotten the go-ahead to do a welcome center and lobby. That's passed the ministry's approval process. We're still waiting for the emergency department to be approved. It's kind of ironic for both of those. Both of those projects have been entirely, the funding for them have been raised by the community, but the government still needs to, not any money comes from the ministry, but they have to approve both of those to go forward. So we're waiting for the emergency, but the Welcome Center, likely we will start the renovation in the summer, and so we will see disruption to the hospital because the whole first floor, just like the house, is going to be quite disrupted. The other thing about the facility, it's 20 years old. According to the ministry timelines, it has to last for about 50 years, so we're trying to be very thoughtful. We've done a green energy plan, lots of ideas of how we can reinvest to get money back out of the hospital and put back into patient care, and we have a really good facility leader who's helping us with that. Some of the areas that we really think is going to be important to work across the municipalities and health and social services is around all of the restructuring that's coming along. So as you know, there is an announcement that public health is going to be reorganized. The paramedic services are to be reorganized. And while we don't have a lot of information, certainly lots of rumor and some early indications of what might happen. And what we want to do is make sure we work locally not to lose some of the value that we have. We're quite integrated with the paramedic services. Less so, I would say, with public health, because public health is pretty far away, but if those services end up being in a much larger geography, we need to work hard not to lose some of the integration and the relationships that we currently have. So there are a number of people who are already starting to talk about that, a number of individuals, and I think Dufferin County has put in a delegation for this year's EMO conference to talk about what that looks like in Dufferin County. Dufferin County is small. If the restructuring goes forward as planned, we will be about 2% of that population of that region, which is quite small. So we need to make sure that there's provisions to make sure that it works in Dufferin. The medium-sized hospital issue has still not been addressed despite having lots of support locally, and we continue to advocate provincially. And last, mental health and addictions is an area there's been a lot of discussion in the community, and this is where I think an Ontario Health team can really help us to take a complete step back and think about how we might organize mental health services. Right now, the hospital is a bit of the catch-all for people who have significant mental health issues that are escalating, not necessarily the right place for people, so we're looking at working with our mental health partners to think about how we can move that back into local communities. I think that's it. I'm just going to highlight a little bit around the medium-sized hospitals, but it's in your package for your information. I think you just need two key messages. So we have done the research now. Medium-sized hospitals are the most efficient in the province, and they have by far the worst working capital. So when you and I, when I'm up here talking to you guys about making investments in local communities, we are quite disproportionately impacted by working capital and that ability to make investments in our local community and do other things. The last slide is just some local heroes. So we had our, last year we had our annual general meeting in Orangeville. This year we held it in Shelburne. And we had a great turnout in Shelburne, and we had the opportunity at the end of that night to recognize some local heroes. So Gord Willens and Tom Reed were awarded the Dr. David Scott Award, which is quite a prestigious award, as well as the Jennifer Woodler Hockey Tournament Group. Hockey Moms and Mike were recognized for the work they've made. I think it's about $600,000 over the period of time that they ran the hockey tournament. And all those donations really made it possible for hundreds, if not thousands, of people to receive local cancer care. It's quite a remarkable story. So it was nice to be able to see the organization recognize them, and I think they were really happy to see that recognition. Eileen Dahl, who's on the top right there, also won the Cheers Award. She is a patient with metastatic bone cancer, but she's one of our patient advisors who does quite a bit around patient advisory work. She sits on our palliative committee. She also sits on the Ontario Health Team committee, developing that and brings a unique perspective. And then on the bottom left is Stacy, who's a paramedic who was called to a home, I think with someone who had stomach pain and was able to deliver a daughter to a mom who did not know they were going to have a baby, and to a grandmother who did not know they were going to have a grandchild. And they came to the paramedic station to thank Tom Stacy for just how compassionate and wonderful he was. So that I will see if any questions.
Great. Any questions for Stacey?
Urology.
Yes.
Do we have some doctors coming up?
Yes, we do.
To
We have a new
hospital?
doctor. His name is Dr. Moody, and we have a golf tournament tomorrow. And if all goes well and we're able to fundraise the last pieces of equipment for him, he should be ready and doing surgeries as well as consultations starting in later this month. Yes. It's an exciting return back to the community. We have a lot of emergency urology issues as well, and so we're hoping over time to build up those services.
I remember when it was there. So.
Yeah, it's been going for a while.
Would it be overly optimistic to think that the medium-sized hospital funding problem might be addressed as part of the restructuring eventually?
Yeah, so what their plan is to move to a per capita funding model. And I think what's going to happen is when they move to that model and they do the kind of notional, the first, rough, you're going to see some really big inequities. I think Dufferin has quite an inequity, not just in hospital, but also in home and community care services. Between Erie St. Clair and this region, their home care services are funded about 150% of what they are here. So it's quite a disparity. How they're going to manage to address that inequity, I'm not sure, but they say they are committed to doing it over time. And that formula will really be per capita. But as you probably know, there's lots of funding formulas that have been tried. I wouldn't say it's the government's strong suit coming up with per capita funding models. So I'm sure it won't be perfect, but there certainly will be a lot of pressure to address some of the more systemic equities, including the medium-sized hospitals.
Just had a question for Tom. I don't want to put you on the spot, but could you maybe just give council a brief overview of the paramedic restructuring, just in case they're not aware?
Well, certainly.
We dealt with it at county.
So to date, we haven't had a lot of information, but certainly the early indication was that they were thinking about putting it into 10 regions. So very similar to what public health has, and from what I understand, as of late, that even some of the discussions about policing services also there. So we have been working with AMO. We've also been working with the Ontario Chiefs Association, and but again, even the ministry folks that we normally deal with don't have a lot of information for us. So we're waiting for them, and we're hoping to start the consultation process. So that's.
If I could follow up on that, is it useful for us to help out? Like you said, you're in consultation with AMO, but can the municipalities in some form or way help out, say, putting motions forward that we're not interested in the system that they're thinking about, we'd rather keep what we got?
I think you can. I'm not sure what forum that's going to be at this point. Certainly, they said they're going to have consultation. They're going to be listening to the local voices. We're going to have an opportunity to provide our feedback. Certainly, I think at that time, and I think probably the best forum that you're there is at AMO coming up here very shortly, would be making sure that our AMO representatives are very clearly understand who will be discussing that with the ministry.
We'll be at AMO.
So if you have an opportunity, and I'm not sure who will be there from the province at that point. But.
How many regions is there currently?
Currently, there is approximately 54. So every upper tier municipality, and just to give the history on that, prior to 2000, the year 2000, there was a very mixed number of different types of delivery services, everything from hospitals to municipalities, but significantly there was quite a few private operators. There was even direct ministry ones. So in 2000, probably 1998 exactly, was effective in 2000, they downloaded it to the upper tier municipality. So since 2000, all upper tier municipalities have been responsible for delivering land ambulance services. They also have First Nations that would also be included in that upper tier municipality. So roughly 54 organized, and they've all pretty much either taken direct delivery or contracted, similar to our situation with Dufferin County. We call it a partnership, but certainly it is a contract to provide services through Headwaters, but it is ultimately the responsibility of the County of Dufferin to provide services here in Dufferin. But it's a big change.
Yes. Thank you.
Sorry, one more question.
Sorry, Tom.
The way the system, no, it's not for Tom actually, it's for Stacy. Tom, you can sit down for a while. The way the system, the province is looking at it, the way the LIN has been created, it's huge. We're one of the biggest LIN systems that they're going to create. Am I correct in that thought process?
No, so these Ontario health teams, we're not sure the size they will be, so they will replace the LIN. The LINs, the expectation is that they will sunset, likely in the next 12 to 18 months. They will discontinue as an entity. Portions of their role will go into Ontario Health, this large entity that is provincial in nature, and some will stay regional, and then other parts will go into these Ontario Health teams. And Ontario Health teams originally said that it would be a population up to 300,000, so Dufferin and Caledon would kind of fit into that grouping. So, it's kind of funny that the combination, some things are being regionalized into much bigger groups, while the Ontario Health teams are really coming much more local into the communities. And the question is going to be, how do those things interact with one another?
The question that you're asking, I think, was around the region of 10. Was that?
Yeah, the region of 10, because my understanding
which
is we have
3.3 million was the size of the 10. If the public health and the ambulance, if they were to reach that, especially the border that the current one is for public health, was about 3.3 million, which was I believe the largest.
Correct. It would be largest. Be larger than Toronto.
And how that's going to affect service within our area when it's a population to the south.
Waterloo, Wellington, it's quite a large area.
It's quite a large
Halton.
area. Right. But that does not affect the hospital to any great degree?
Yeah, so it will affect the hospital because those are the core partners that we, in order to really get at population health and integration, the partners you really need to work with are public health and paramedic services in addition to local. So it's really how the pieces of all this, it's a lot of change in a short period of time, and it's how these pieces are going to come together. I think the good news is that locally the leadership is already working together, trying to figure out how we can integrate locally and keep those relationships and talk provincially and try and provide best advice so that we don't lose the benefits that we have today.
So is it like, well, it's a smaller Ontario Health team that's actually going to be dealing with like patients that are discharged and require additional.
Correct.
Okay. That's what I was trying to figure out, the differential between one and the other.
Yeah, so just a quick picture. So Ontario Health would be the provincial agency, it would be quite large. It would have cancer care provincially, standards, quality, and then I think what we've heard is some number of regional programs or regional entities, of which the paramedic and public health services would come, and then underneath that you would have Ontario Health teams. So the idea of thinking about integration across the whole system is really important, and those are the elements we're going to try and keep strong going forward. We are quite, even our palliative care services here, Dufferin paramedics are probably the leader in Ontario around community paramedicine. They do home visits to frail seniors. They're supporting palliative care in the community. They're not just doing transfers as you might expect in some other jurisdictions. So they really are a part not only of emergency, but some of the more upstream as well as chronic disease management support. And without them, the hospital would be a lot fuller than it would, and there would be a lot more people in hospital who don't need to be there.
That's what I'm worried about.
Right. Any further questions? Okay. So the motion that received the presentation from Headwaters Health Care Center, mover and seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Hall, seconded by Councillor Fegan. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Yeah. You can stick around if you want. Inquiries. Any council inquiries? Councillor Wagner.
So I've got a few here, I guess. So I guess recently it was published that Grand Valley is to have their water treatment upgrades paid for by the developer. So I've heard some chatter regarding why we can't do that. After looking further into the article itself, it looks like they are going to be using development charges. So it made it seem like the developer was going to pay for it sort of secondary to the developer, the development charges. So I guess just so we can maybe get some information out there to the public that it's not the developer kind of putting out $2.5 million out of their own pocket. They're going to be using the development charges. Now, my concern with that too is we were told it's going to be a lot harder to sort of get development charges, and so I was wondering how they're doing this. How are they going to use the development charges to pay for that? So I don't know if you guys have any, or if you can come back with me at the next meeting, or whatever.
We're not familiar with what Grand Valley's done, and again, unfortunately, we can't rely on one article.
Right.
But we certainly can provide you with the background on how development charges work, and we can certainly contact Grand Valley to ask them about that article when they provide us with any clarity.
Yes, just like I said, because I've heard some chatter, and people are like, "What's wrong with Shelburne? Why can't they get the developers to pay for the, the upgrades that we need for well and whatnot?" So I just thought it would be good to set the record straight as to how they are actually paying for it. I guess my second question, so again, having some information come through where the new government regulations are restricting using tax dollars to pay for events that I guess a politician would be the main speaker. So how does this affect council going to conferences? So yeah, I wasn't sure. So I guess there's new government regulations, like it's been kind of passed or whatever, said that they're not allowing tax dollars to pay for any members to go to an event where a politician is a main speaker. So I wasn't sure how that worked with conferences. You know, how there is an allotment for councillors to attend a conference.
Yeah,
Is that
They're not
not-
the main speaker.
Yeah,
We're not
I
speaking.
think the
Okay.
intent is that, you know, it would be a purely political event, like a
Right.
fundraising dinner or something like that. So AMO, for example, you know, it's a full-fledged conference organized by AMO. Yes,
Right.
they have politicians there speaking, but they aren't sort of the sole purpose. They're,
Okay.
you know, part of the larger conference.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think what that's targeting is, you know, a purely political event.
Right.
And
Yeah.
rightfully so.
Yeah, of
Shouldn't be
course.
using taxpayer dollars to send us to a
Right, and I
conservative or liberal
I
party
totally
fundraiser.
agree. I totally agree. I was just like, how does this work if we're gonna go to conferences? I guess my last question might be for Jim. Just wondering if the line painting for the roads has started, or when that plans to start, because we're looking a little sparse, especially the crosswalk right out our door here. The green has almost disappeared, and we already know how dangerous that crosswalk can be. So just wondering if we have any plans to repaint that anytime soon.
Through your worship, yes, the Public Works crew, they've been out the last few weeks doing the secondary streets that they can do during the daytime hours. As of this morning, they started an early morning shift to get downtown core out of the way while there's less traffic. And now that they got the warmer weather overnight too, the paint dries quicker too. So they're starting on that, or already have started on that.
Perfect.
So.
Thank you.
Councilor Bernardo?
I have a couple of questions, unfortunately, I'm going to go for Jim. Bike lanes, Jim. I love the stencil on the roads, but I don't like the way it's set up. I think it's dangerous. It looks like Greenwood Street. There's no differentiating of the bike lane from the road itself. And with the stencils being so far out from the curb, I fear that if any child or youth were to ride on that, cars would not differentiate at that as a bike lane, and the youth could end up in an accident. When you look at the bike lanes that are done in other places, they usually have a painted line designating that as a bike lane with the stencil inside that area. So
To be clear though, the direction that we gave was not to create a dedicated bike lane. It was the bike share program. Because
Yes.
Jim's report that we heard earlier indicated that our streets weren't wide enough to accommodate a dedicated lane. So this was sort of the, you know,
Even
the
so,
alternative, you know, middle ground approach. So
I
mean,
understand, but it's so far out that I'm worried about where the location of it is, and they're right, yeah, it's so far, it's a bit of a concern.
But I think the intent is to alert drivers that this is a route that's heavily, you know, used by bikers. So it's not indicating that's where the bikes are supposed to be riding. It's more of a courtesy alert for drivers to say, you know, this is a road that's frequented by bikes. You know, to use extra caution. Am I right, Jim? Or?
Through your worship, yes, that's the idea, that it just, as a reminder, delineates that bikes could be on the road at the same time as motorists. They're in the works too. They're not by any means complete. There's about 40
No, I
of them,
understand that.
and they'll be at every intersection. So where you pull out in the lane of traffic, there'll be a marking there on the road, so in both directions. So it's not just one side of the street.
I'm gonna be honest, if I had known it was gonna be like that, I guess it's our fault maybe not being clear, I don't know. But that's not what I had envisioned when I thought we were gonna be putting bike lanes. To me, I don't think what is currently there is gonna be all that effective. And I think most other places where we've gone to, they do have that delineating lane that's there, or that line that's there that clearly marks this is where the cyclists are gonna be. But if that's the best that we could do, then I guess it is what it is. But I was hoping for a little bit more, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I remember the night we dealt with Jim's report, and I think I asked specifically if you know, our participation in this program had any sort of consequence with respect to the Highway Traffic Act. And the answer was no. I mean, it doesn't change anything. It basically is a courtesy program to alert both cyclists and drivers that this is a route that's heavily traveled by bikes. And, you know, as an alternative to the high cost of reconstructing our roads to widen them and include dedicated bike lanes, this was something that, you know, as we discussed that night, was sort of an achievable middle ground approach.
But would we have to widen the roads? Just use Greenwood, for example. Considering where the painted marker is and where the curve is, I mean, would it require that much more just to add a line that would be enough to accommodate a bike? Where we'd have to widen the road?
Through your worship, Greenwood is one of the few streets that we do have that is very wide in that area, so it's wide right from, it tapers out from just north of the Main Street intersection, and then that carries right up past the park, and then it narrows back in again. So it is a possibility in that area, but that wasn't what we were shooting for when we went with this program.
So I guess maybe as council, do we want to look at whether or not we want to go ahead and move forward and insert those lines if it's not going to be a problem on Greenwood, even if we can't accommodate it on maybe some of the other streets, but at least we can get it on Greenwood, because quite frankly, there is a lot of traffic, especially with their use making their way to the park on Greenwood. So if we could get it on Greenwood, at least.
Could we maybe recirculate that report just by email to council? Because I think you dealt with sort of, you know, minimum maintenance standards that would have to be increased if dedicated bike lanes were added.
So just to follow up though, you have currently just at the intersections. And I know even in Orangeville, they have it further, they keep it going rather than just the intersections, so that if people realize that it is a bike lane even further up. Is that a possibility of moving that stencil, continuing it a few more places up?
The idea of them is anytime there's a change in traffic direction, so a car pulling out of First Street onto Greenwood, there'd be a Shelburne marking right after that intersection headed to the north.
Wow.
And doing that in both directions, but it is possible too on larger spans, like you say, from First up to Robert, that there could be another one planted in it too.
Well, I'm thinking, like, for example, if a car pulls out of Canfield onto Greenwood Street, they may not realize that, you know, when they're coming out that there is a bike lane if they're going to the north, that, like, those types of intersections could be put stencils.
Yes, that's the plan, that there'll be each one of those.
Okay. Now, if I can go to my other question. The crosswalk here, it's been suggested that people don't realize what it is or are confused by what it is. What would it cost to put a few more signs further back saying that there is a crosswalk there and you must stop when lights are flashing?
Through your worship, if it's just a simple sign and post, even with the installation, that's about $70.
It just alerts the drivers that when the lights are flashing that they have to stop. And right now, that's a bit of an issue, that drivers don't realize, you know, they look up to see the lights flashing, they don't realize that there's a person running across, and they drive right through. So if we have that sign up there that when the lights are flashing, they have to stop, that gives them a bit of an alert both ways, so that they will stop and cross up, if that's possible, for whatever cost it is. I think it's just a safety factor for pedestrians.
I remember making a comment, I think it was during last term, when we added the additional lights on the vertical post.
Yeah.
With the addition of that, that was about all we could do, and if that didn't work, you know, I was about ready to tap out and just say, you know what, this isn't working here. And, you know, I've heard a lot of complaints over the last couple of weeks. I think now that, you know, the kids are out of school, there are more pedestrians.
Yeah.
There's more traffic, you know, not just on weekends, but through the week.
Yeah.
And again, you know, I've questioned a couple of times in my own mind, you know, is this something that's working, or should we go back to the drawing board? Yeah, because I've had a few people indicate that they feel safer without that, because the problem is they push it, then they're relying on the fact that it's going to direct drivers to stop, and many times it's not.
But the point is that some drivers don't understand what it is, or are confused by what it is. So if we don't have it, people still cross. And that's even more unsafe. That's the reason we tried to put it in there in the first place, because we were having issues with people crossing.
Except that they would wait for a gap. before they go.
Yeah, and that doesn't work anymore, unfortunately, with the traffic. So I'm just wondering if we have the signs further back, alerting the drivers, then that, you know, that when it's flashing, you must stop. You must stop.
Along with that though, isn't there a be prepared to stop sign that has flashing lights that we could look into as well?
We could.
Do you have any idea what the cost on something like that would be?
I don't. I'd have to do some research.
I think there is one
Is there one?
east of the crosswalk.
Through there, I'd suggest that we bring something back to you to determine and qualify what we have and what we don't have. Costs associated with it, MTO approvals are required for anything within the connecting link, so that maybe there could be one consolidated summary of where we are currently with this intersection.
One of the other theories, I mean, there may be some substance to it too, is that there's so much going on at that intersection now in terms of, you know, pylons and lights and signs that it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
So, you know, I know what you're saying, and you know, I'm absolutely supportive of it in principle. I'm just, you know, I'm not sure if adding more signage to a crosswalk that's already, you know, signed to the max is going to do anything. But
So I'm wondering if we change the lights on top instead of being amber and put red and green on there, we might get more results.
What about an indication a little further up as well on the road is, you know, crosswalk or something when painted? Is that MTO approval for that too? Okay, because I've heard that, I've had that suggestion thrown at me too, like, well, further up on both sides, there should be something on the road that says you're coming up to a crosswalk. You know, again, I've had someone say another sign further, you know, back on both sides. Somebody also recommended the sign that actually flashes, that so when somebody presses the button, that sign, you know, further down the road starts to flash and says, be prepared to stop. So I've heard those as well. I mean, it's sad to say drivers should be paying attention and we shouldn't need all of this, but I get it. Sometimes the way the sun is affecting the lights, you don't see that the lights are flashing because the glare from the sun. So I know there are some issues, but yeah, just if those are some other avenues, I guess we can look into as well for the report, you know, painting the road and all that fun stuff.
How about we put the train barricades up?
Yeah. Something.
so you guys can do some research and come back.
Put the train barricades up with the noises.
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding,
Bells,
ding.
yeah.
Yeah, the arms come down.
Yeah.
It'd be perfect.
Yeah.
On a lighter note, while we're still in council inquiries, do you want to mention the red shirts? In case anybody's wondering.
Yes.
Well, I mean, we obviously
And
had
then tie in a report on Canada Day if you want.
Sure. Yeah, so obviously we had our Canada Day celebrations this past weekend, and it was great to see a great turnout from council as well. And we got challenged to a tug of war competition, which we accepted and lost miserably on the first go around. But we did
Redeem
ourselves by standing back up and trying again and winning the next two. So as our reward, we got to get brand new shirts. So we thought we'd be celebratory, shall we say, today.
Yes. We are the champions.
2 out of 3.
2 out of 3 is not bad.
But it was a fantastic Canada Day.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for
that was amazing.
all the work that was
Thank
done.
you for your help on
The
that as well.
fireworks were just fabulous. I had a lot of compliments that night. The mayor was there as well, Cardinal, on the fireworks. Like you said, it was well attended by people. The parking lot was full. And when I left, they were still trying to get out of the parking lot.
Still gotta figure out how to fix that.
Yeah, I tried to get it, but
It wasn't that bad. It really, I think
Most people were polite.
most people were very polite and things were moving, and within 10 to 15 minutes, and there was no issues from what I gathered. I didn't hear any. Everyone just would let people in and turning, and it was good. So it wasn't that bad.
I just want to take a moment and congratulate Linda on her axe throwing.
Very true.
She was spot on.
The bullseye.
She was spot on. The entertainment, Kyle, was fantastic. I did have a number of queries about you and your band actually performing, and I'm hoping that next Canada Day we can get to see you on the stage.
Well, I did put it to the guys, and like I said, this year I didn't want to put it forward because I was afraid that it might have been a conflict of interest, but there has been a number of people ask, so I will certainly ask the guys, and we'll see what we can do about next year.
Yeah, job well done. Both of you guys, you and Lindsay.
And Walter as well.
Are you going to be singing next year?
Yeah. If we're up on the stage, then yeah, I'll be going singing.
Sweet.
Excellent. All right, so on to the consent agenda. There's a few items listed there. Just for the public's benefit, I just wanted to highlight number 1, which is notice of the special meeting being held this coming Wednesday, July the 10th at 6:30 in the hall next door, and that is the meeting will decide with respect to the policing issue going forward. And then secondly, the correspondence from Shelburne Police Association regarding comments on the draft renovation plan that I had asked them to consider. Jen's here, so thank you very much for that letter. Is there anything else that anybody would like to speak to in that list? All right, so motion to receive items number 1 through 4 under 6A consent agenda, moved by Councilor Donato, seconded by Councilor Fegan. All in favor? Carried. All right, so on to the regular agenda. The first is a report from our Director of Development and Operations regarding Greenwood Park parking lot line painting request.
Through your worship, back at the May 27th council meeting, there was a request that came to council for painting lines on the gravel parking lot at Greenwood Park. That was removed from the consent agenda and was referred back to staff for further comment. So currently, Greenwood Park does have 2 different types of parking lot delineation there now. The north end of the parking lot, there's posts or bollards where you can line up and park in between. And on the south side of the parking lot, the newer section, there's actually prefabricated concrete parking blocks that have been installed there. So again, so the vehicle can line up, give the appropriate distance between them and the next vehicle. It is possible to paint lines on the gravel surface. Wouldn't last any substantial amount of time, being a gravel parking lot. Rain, even in the photos that I've attached as appendix, you can see where somebody's done donuts in the parking lot too. So this would basically just break out the lines unless they were kept in a constant state of repair. So that would be a lot of maintenance for the soccer group. So it would be staff's suggestion that parking posts and blocks should be sufficient to inform the public where to park, and that the temporary painting, unless continuously maintained, would be visibly unappealing and should be avoided if possible.
Any question for Jim? I mean, it seems somewhat intuitive to me that, I mean, if you're painting gravel, it's not going to last any length of time. But I don't have kids in soccer, so I don't know if parking is a major issue there. But one would think that, as you say, using the posts and the bollards, most drivers I think should be able to figure out where to park.
Do you think maybe painting the posts or painting the concrete, maybe a bit of a brighter color, will indicate the spots better?
The posts right now are white, so they're fairly visible.
Pretty visible.
The parking blocks, they're just your standard concrete.
One, right?
And there are a lot of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you remember seeing quite a few?
Okay, well, we'll read the motion, and if there's any further discussion we can have. Be it resolved, the council receives report D0-2019-09 regarding the Greenwood Park parking lot line painting request as presented and circulated. Mover and seconder for that. By Councilor Fegan, second by Councilor Buffett. Any further discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you, sir. You're up again. A report regarding the water and wastewater truck purchase.
Right. Public Works staff have been preparing for the purchase of the new truck since 2018, gathering quotes, doing research with other municipalities, and building a reserve for partial funding of the truck, which was begun in 2018. The current vehicle is a 2008, and it was fully amortized as of 2017. And although it does have come to its end of its life by being on paper, it's been the recommendation of our water lead hand that to retain the vehicle. It did have some work done on it last year that couldn't wait until the new purchase, so that has extended its life a little bit longer and would just make for more efficiencies in operations. Our two operators wouldn't have to necessarily ride together all the time. So this was budgeted for in our 2019 budget, which was passed March 4th of this year as a capital purchase. On May 2nd, 2019, we put out an RFP for the vehicle, and we did receive two proposals back, one from Trillium Ford and one from East Ford Lincoln. So we did do a comparison of these to make sure that we're comparable vehicles. They're both extended cabs, they both have the same weight class. They were very close in price, at about $3,000 difference. And Trillium Ford came in at the lowest, our local Ford dealer. So the water and sewer capital budget contained an estimate for the truck of $106,000 for the vehicle. The funds for the purchase, $40,000 was placed in reserve last year to bring forward to 2019, and $42,400 is being funded from the sewer reserves, which leaves us a balance of $23,600 coming from water rates. We do have a budgeted shortfall there, of just about $16,000, and it's staff's suggestion that the difference be taken from the 2019 water rates. The water budget already allocated $74,043 to be transferred to reserves at the end of the year. This means it would just be less that amount. So we did follow our procurement policy and our consultations. We're up at Georgian Bay Waterworks. We found that Passaic Beach had a very comparable truck to what we were looking for, and we worked with them to produce the RFP.
So this is like the cube van looking truck, sort of, you see driving around.
We just need to clarify, Jen, the recommendation.
So if we do keep the old truck, then we can take the shortfall from development charges, because it is a growth-related purchase. However, if council chooses to not keep two trucks working, then we would have to take it from reserves.
Because we're adding to the existing fleet as opposed to just replacing.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So just to clarify the recommendations that we're suggesting that it's more strategic to utilize the development charges and then maintain the existing fleet as is, and then we would look at when this vehicle that Jim recognized would just spend money on maintenance and allowing to have a longer life. At some point then we would surplus it later. But for now, it's more efficient to continue having it in the operating fleet.
So if we're adding it to the current fleet, could we not pay more out of DCs for this vehicle?
There actually isn't more in DCs. There's around 17,000 DCs.
Oh, yeah, water.
And we need 16,000.
And question for Jim, does it have to be an aluminum box? Because that's an awful expensive box.
That was what we were finding was the standard for that type of truck. It's kind of a specialized piece of equipment, similar to plow trucks, that sort of thing. So that's the aluminized body would just give us that much more life. It's a little more resistant to rusting out. It still can happen, but it's better than a steel body.
It's also lighter too.
Yeah, it is a very heavy truck, but it's going to be all said and done.
So just, oh, sorry, go ahead.
So if I continue, this is like the truck itself is a regular two-ton truck? What are they, 3-ton?
I believe it's a 450 or 550, sorry.
It was a 250, isn't it?
550.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that puts it in about the 3-ton category.
3-ton category. So it's a regular 3-ton truck. And this box sit on top.
Yes.
So we can utilize this box, doesn't matter what other vehicle we want to put it on in the future if we buy another vehicle. The box has nothing to do, the truck could be surplus on its own.
Yes, it could be just taken off the chassis and reused. It's still in good shape.
But there's no actual, that it's sitting on the chassis, there's no actual other box like what I'm thinking of, like a normal pickup truck. There's no.
No, it doesn't slide in or whatever.
It's right on the
It's
chassis.
bolted right to it, yes.
Okay, I was just trying to figure out how it was made.
So just so I'm clear, the longer term strategy would be to surplus the existing truck at some point.
Well, when the life of it is no longer, then you would always usually surplus fleet where the cost of repairing it and keeping it active is greater than the cost of maintaining and keeping it in the fleet. But what we're saying right now, because we had recently spent money to keep it going as we waited for this particular equipment, and that our staff are exceptionally busy, and having one vehicle requires two of them to constantly travel together, this will expedite their ability to deliver service. And there's not much more cost to continuing to keep the other truck in the fleet.
And we have 2 staff members dedicated on water and wastewater.
Yes, through your worship, yes, currently we do. We do have a third person who's licensed, but just the way it's budgeted right now, 2 full-time.
Alrighty, we'll get the motion on the floor, and then if there's anything else we can add to it. Be it resolved, the council receives report P0-2019-10 regarding the water and wastewater truck and utility box purchase dated July 8, 2019, as presented and circulated. And the council accepts the quote from Trillium Ford in the amount of $119,806.05 plus HST, and the $15,914.64 of the total cost be covered by development charges for growth-related vehicle purchases. We'll move for a seconder for that. Councillor Buffett, seconded by Councillor Bernardo. Anything further? Carried. Thank you, Jim. Thank you. All right, financial update from the treasurer. Do you want to present anything? Or?
Just a couple of points. We are still working on the procurement policy. It just seems to be taking the back burner to everything else that comes along, but it will be forthcoming. I reported that on the March quarterly report as well. And you may notice on the general capital, which is the second chart, we do have some costs incurred under, sorry, where is it? Under workshop, $63,240 with a zero budgeted amount. That is the continued work on the 420 Victoria Street. And staff are working with SBA and Associates to bring a report back to council on August 26th that will further explain the status of that project.
So that's the old works yard. Okay, so be it resolved, the council receives report FS 2019-11 from the treasurer with respect to the June 30th, 2019 financial update as presented and circulated. Moved by Councillor Fegan, seconded by Councillor Buffett. Any comments on that? All in favor? Carried. All right. Another report from the treasurer regarding the 2020 budget schedule.
And that's fairly straightforward. This would be the normal schedule in a budget year without an election. So I know it feels like we just did a budget, but we're going to do another one.
All right, be it resolved, the council receives report FS 2019-12 from the treasurer and approves the 2020 budget schedule as presented and circulated. Moved by Councilor Donato, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson. All in favor? Carried. All right. Next up, we have reports regarding Little's Halloween haunt in the park. Jennifer, you want to speak to that?
So this is a report similar to last year's report that was circulated. We just wanted to advise council of the amount of waiving of rental fees they're requesting, and to remind you that there is a waiving of rental fees policy. Anything over $500 should be going through the municipal grant funding application process.
So we have a slightly different resolution prepared here than what was included in the agenda package, and it basically reflects the similar motion we passed at the last meeting dealing with Picking the Park. So it essentially grants the request that they're making, but suggests that for next year they apply through the community grant process. So it reads, be it resolved, the council receives report LS 2019-11 regarding Little's haunt in the park as presented and circulated, and the council authorizes the donation of staff time and assistance for the 2019 event. And further, the council directs the organizers of Little's haunt in the park to utilize the municipal grant funding process for all future requests relating to waiving rental fees and in-kind donations for the event, and that staff forward a copy of the grant application to the organizers to be considered for the 2020 event. So mover and seconder for that, Councillor Wagner, seconded by Councillor Fegan. Any questions on that? All in favor? Carried. And another waiving of fees request from the Rotary Club. This one was $500 right on the nose, so that's within our policy. So we have a motion, be it resolved, the council receives the letter from the Rotary Club of Shelburne dated June 26, 2019, and the council authorizes the waiving of rental fees for use of the stage during their event. Mover and seconder for that. Councilor Donato, second by Councilor Wagner. All in favor? Carried. All right, next we have a nomination for the Community Excellence Award. It's a nomination made by Deputy Mayor Anderson. So the motion reads, be it resolved, the council awards the Community Excellence Award to Mr. Alton Stevenson, and that Mr. Stevenson be invited to a future council meeting to receive his award. Moved by Deputy Mayor Anderson, I assume, seconded by Councilor Buffett. Do you want to speak to that, Steve?
Sure, absolutely. So it's an honor actually to put forward Alton's name for this award. Alton has been running the drop-in program at Glenbrook for the last, I'd say, 5 years and counting. And he runs it normally during the course of the school year, twice a week, for kids to come in and have some recreational opportunities. I've gone to the program on a number of occasions. I've seen it grow at least from about maybe 15 kids to maybe 30 plus. And from what I understand, the number keeps growing. In addition to having myself there, he's had the police come in and mentor the kids. He's had the fire department come in and other members of the community come in and sort of provide mentorship opportunities to the kids that are there as well. The group is very diverse, certainly represents the community, and I just thought that based on his commitment to the community and the people that he's impacted, I felt that he was deserving of the award, so that's why I put his name forward. Sure. Yeah, whatever I need to do, I'll do it. Yeah, that's...
You have to do that for weight, that's all.
Okay. I've been told by Walter that I must do this. All right.
Put it in my book.
Let it be so. All right, so the motion's on the floor. All in favor? It's carried. And just as an aside, for any counselor who's interested in nominating somebody for the Community Excellence Award, the clerk has the nomination form, so simply fill it out. turn it back in, and then we can address it in a future meeting.
Just to follow up on this, what I'm hoping for, and this may be already in the works, but when we have individuals of this nature that we're recognizing, I'm hoping that we can upload this on a section of our website so that the community can see this as well. So I don't know if there's a section on our website that has, let's say, community acknowledgements or whatever, but I'm thinking that there should be, if we don't already, have something designated on our webpage where not only do the families and the people who show up here to our meetings know who this individual is, but the rest of the community that we're encouraging to go visit our sites.
I'll make a suggestion, we make a section on the website called Special Heroes.
Or local community heroes.
Our local community heroes, put it under there so that.
So we're featuring that, right?
If we can get a picture of them that night, put that beside so that people see that.
Can we allocate that much difficult?
I'm not sure.
No, we should be able to.
I've spoken to Carol about this previously. It shouldn't be, it's just a matter of just getting
Get it back in, let me try.
Shouldn't be that hard.
It shouldn't be, but anyways, I'll leave it to staff to make the determination.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Next up, we have two notices of motion from the last meeting. The first one was moved by Councillor Donato, seconded by Councillor Buffett. Be it resolved, the council directs staff to investigate the cost of providing a four-way stop sign at Gordon and First Avenue and install the four-way stop to eliminate the issue of sight lines. Councillor Donato, do you want to speak to that?
If you've ever driven up Gordon Street and ever come across First Ave, there is cycling issues there. So I think that four-way stop is just a safety feature. The fact now that we're also adding additional development on the one side of Gordon Street, this is only creating more issues in the way of traffic and whatnot coming out onto First and Gordon. So I think the four-way stop is an excellent way of providing safety for the people that live on Gordon and First Avenue.
Can I just add into that, because of the development taking place, there'll be a lot of construction going on, so there'll be a need for them to stop and look before they turn. So I think having the four-way stop will help.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, Steve had indicated at the last meeting that this is something that we could sort of parcel in as part of the development going forward, but I mean, it seems like a fairly inexpensive solution. I think we should probably just move on our own initiative rather than wait. Staff, any initial thoughts? With Jim, yeah.
Jim's on.
We typically get comments from police on this as well.
And residents.
So we'll follow up.
I suspect from the few residents that were at the last public meeting that I spoke to at the break, I would suspect that we'll probably have support from them, but time will tell us.
So the issue is, Your Worship, do we go ahead with this motion tonight, or do we delay it for one meeting until the next meeting to hear back what you've asked for the way of report?
Well, I think the motion actually asks for staff to investigate it, so it's sort of two-pronged, right? You're asking them to investigate it and install it, presumably if the investigation is positive. So I'm okay to move forward tonight. Any other comments on that? All in favor? Carried. And secondly, notice the motion moved by Councillor Fegan and seconded by Councillor Hall. Be it resolved, the council authorizes the costing to pave the northernmost land of Fiddle Park from the entrance to no less than 600 feet in or to the second laneway adjacent to said laneway to aid in extra uses of the park, with a report back to council to be carried out by staff by August on said costing. Councillor Fegan?
No, first, just to make a slight correction, what it says there, where it says pave the northernmost land, should be northernmost lane.
Okay.
So in specifics, the initial concept came when we potentially would have had to move the street fast over to Fiddle Park. One of the concerns that we had was if we were to do that, we would lose our soapbox derby. So adding a paved section of that laneway would certainly avail using Fiddle Park for purposes such as that. Plus the fact of going right up to that second laneway brings it right up to where we've got our garden that we're putting in, so that certainly would help out with transportation to get up and access.
Okay. All right. Councillor Hall?
think that you pretty much summed it up. Not much more to do.
Questions, Councilor Donato?
No, not questions, actually comments. It aids with dust as well, because on a lot of vehicles, that's our first entrance into the park, so if you're on the soap there, we would aid with that. It would aid. We also have trailers going in there, we use the dump station as well, so it would aid with that as well. So I think it's an excellent proposal, and I'm all in favor of it.
The only concern I had, I know staff's got a lot on their plate in terms of requests from us, is August doable?
There's one meeting in August on the 26th. I would suggest September is more reasonable.
I'm good with that.
That's still in time for budget.
So what if we offer a friendly amendment to this to say we carried out
By the end of September. So that
by end
gives
of
us 2
September?
weeks.
Is that okay?
Still have no time for budget.
Yeah, so then we'll still have the information before budget time.
Just what I was targeting for, yeah, so.
Okay. Excellent. Anything further? All in favor? It's carried. Any notices of motion to be presented tonight? No? All right, moving right along.
We'll make up for it.
We need enough time.
We'll get out before it's dark.
Don't get ahead of steam up here. Communications. Be it resolved, the council receives items number 1 to 6 under 8.0 communications as presented and circulated. I'm moving a seconder for that. Councilor Donato, second by Councilor Buffett. Is there anything anybody wants to speak to? All in favor? Carried. All right, confirming bylaw, be it resolved that leave be given for the reading and enacting of bylaw number 42-2019, being a bylaw to confirm certain proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Shelburne for its regular council meeting held July 8, 2019. Moved by Councilor Fegan, second by Councilor Wagner. All in favor? And finally, be it resolved that we now adjourn and we need to call the mayor. Moved by Councilor Wagner.